Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. So, in continuing with the chapter of menstruation in Bulugh al-Maram, and hadith number 118. And of the things that's mentioned, al-hayd في الاصطلاح هو جريان الدم من قعر الرحم على موجب الجبلة والطبيعة، ويكون في أوقات معلومة غالبا، ويقال للحيض نفاس، ومنه قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم لعلك نفستي، يعني حدتي. ثم قال هذا شيء كتبه الله على بنات آدم. So here it mentions that menses is the menstrual blood that comes from the uterus in a way that is natural as Allah has decreed, and it comes in specific times in majority of cases. And also the one who is on the cycle is also referred to as nafas, based on the hadith of the Prophet. He said la'allaki nafisti, that you have come on your cycle, using the word from the derivative of nafas. And he said هذا شيء كتبه الله على بنات آدم. This is something that Allah has written upon the daughters of Adam. So the females, this is something that is a natural part of the creation, that Allah has created them in this manner, and it's not a deficiency in them. Rather, it's just how Allah has decreed for women to go through this process. And there are matters that are discussed regarding menses that the scholars they differ upon, that we'll come to mention as we go through, inshallah ta'ala. But the first hadith is an Aisha رضي الله عنها أن فاطمة بنت أبي حبيش كانت تستحاض فقال لها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن دم الحيض دم أسود يعرف فإذا كان ذلك فأمسكي عن الصلاة فإذا كان الآخر فتوضئي وصلي. رواه أبو داود والنسائي وصححه ابن حبان والحاكم واستنكره أبو حاتم. So the first hadith, it mentions that Aisha anha, she said Fatima, daughter of Abu Hubaysh, had a prolonged flow of blood, which is referred to as istihada. And he mentioned, and the Prophet Muhammad he mentioned to her that the menstrual blood is dark, recognizable. So if that comes, then avoid the prayer. But if it is the other light colored, then perform wudu and offer the salah, for that is blood of a vein. So here the Prophet Muhammad is giving a description of how to recognize the menstrual blood from other types of blood. The period of menstrual bleeding can vary between 1 to 15 days or 3 to 10 days. However, each woman would know her normal time of her cycle. So anything that is outside of her normal time is going to be considered istihada, this prolonged bleeding. Now, so if it's outside of your normal time and you have this prolonged bleeding, then you are to, as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, make wudu and perform the salah. وفي حديث أسماء بنت عميس عند أبي داود ولتجلس في مركن فإذا رأت صفرة فوق الماء فلتغتسل للظهر والعصر غسلا واحدا وتغتسل للمغرب والعشاء غسلا واحدا وتغتسل للفجر غسلا واحدا وتتوضأ فيما بين ذلك. So in this hadith, that is mentioned that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said she should sit in a tub, and when she sees a yellowish color on the surface of the water, she should take a bath once for Dhuhr and Asr, and another for Maghrib and Isha, and once for Fajr. And in between these times, she should perform wudu before any acts of worship that requires a purification. And in the next hadith, عن حمنة بنت جحش قالت: كنت أستحاد حيضة كثيرة شديدة، فأتيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أستفتيه، فقال: إنما هي ركدة من الشيطان، فتحيضي 6 أيام أو 7 أيام ثم اغتسلي، فإذا استنقأت فصلي 24 أو 23 وصومي وصلي، فإن ذلك يجزئك، وكذلك فافعلي كل شهر كما تحيض النساء، فإن قويت على أن تؤخري الظهر وتعجلي العصر، ثم تغتسلي حين تطهرين وتصلي الظهر والعصر جميعا، ثم تؤخرين المغرب وتعجلين العشاء، ثم تغتسلين وتجمعين بين الصلاتين، فافعلي، وتغتسلين مع الصبح وتصلين. قال: وهو أعجب الأمرين إلي، رواه الخمسة إلا النسائي، وصححه الترمذي وحسنه al-Bukhari. So in this hadith it mentions that Hamna bint Jahsh, she had severe prolonged bleeding, and it was abundant and continuous. So she came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ for a fatwa, for a religious opinion, and he said, this is the result of a stroke or a stab by the devil. Therefore, you must observe your menses for 6 or 7 days, then take a bath, and when you see that you are purified and quite clean, pray for 23 or 24 days, based on counting your menses for 6 or 7 days. And fast and pray. That will indeed suffice you. And do like this every month, just as the other women who normally menstruate. But if you are strong enough to delay Dhuhr prayer and advance the Asr prayer, then take a bath and combine Dhuhr and Asr. Then delay Maghrib and bring forth Isha, and then take a bath and combine Maghrib and Isha, and take a bath for Fajr. Allah's Messenger said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, of these two options, this one appeals more to my liking, I taking a bath at these 3 times daily. Naam. So all of these ahadith, they describe the asl of the menstruating blood, that is dark in color, and that it has a normal time period, a normal time period that is roughly 6 to 7 days. But a normal time period can vary between 1 and 15 days, or 3 to 10 days, based on difference of opinion of Ahlul Ilm. So a woman, from the time her cycle starts, when she reaches that age, then she should observe what is her normal menstrual cycle. And that which now goes beyond that normal time may be considered to be istihada, which is prolonged bleeding. And when the prolonged bleeding occurs, then one is to perform ghusl and pray. And to pray. And these are of the things that was mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that to combine the salawat and make ghusl at those given 3 times that we had mentioned. And it shows that the one who has istihada, that has the prolonged bleeding, is permitted to combine the salah. And Hamna bint Jahshin was one of those, radiallahu anha, who was afflicted with prolonged bleeding during the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also shows the virtue of the women of the Sahaba, where they wouldn't be shy to ask questions that will grant them fiqh of the religion, especially in matters that are specific to them. And the scholars, they mention, when it comes to a woman seeking knowledge, then the priority is her to seek knowledge in ahkam that are khas bin nisa. Rulings that are specific to women should be her priority in seeking knowledge. And also that shaitan has some form of impact on the woman, and the flowing of blood from the menses and the likes. From what the Prophet Muhammad mentioned, إنما هي ركضة من الشيطان, that is a stab from the shaitan. And as for one who doesn't have a norm of her menstrual cycle, then she goes by what is the average time of a woman, which is 6 or 7 days. According to the majority of the women that are around her. Now, it mentions that the one who has prolonged bleeding, she has a choice of two circumstances. Either which is a tawqit, which is to pray in its correct time, or al-jam', to combine the salawat. If she chooses a tawqit, where she prays at the time of each salah, then she's required to make wudu for each salah. But if she chooses al-jam', to combine, then she performs ghusl at those 3 times that we mentioned, to combine between dhuhr and asr, maghrib and isha, and for salat al-fajr. She'll make ghusl at each of those times. And the combining and making ghusl was the preferred option mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He said, "Huwa a'jabul amrayn ilayya." That is the preferred or the better of the two options to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Also mentioned the next hadith an Aisha anha anna Habiba bint Jahshin رضي الله عنها شكت إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الدم فقال امكثي قدر ما كانت تحبسك حيدتك ثم اغتسلي فكانت تغتسل لكل صلاة رواه مسلم وفي رواية للبخاري وتوضئي لكل صلاة وهي لأبي داود وغيره من وجه آخر. So I mentioned that Habiba, she complained to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam about having prolonged bleeding, and he mentioned to her, keep away from the prayer the length of time that your menses would have prevented you. Then take a bath and offer the prayers. And she used to take a bath for every prayer. And in another narration in Bukhari, it said she would perform wudu for every salah. So from this, it means that the one who has prolonged bleeding, then she would go back to the time of her regular cycle to make measure of her days based on her regular cycle. How long it would be, either 6 days or 7 days or whatever her norm was. Also, of the things that Habiba performing ghusl for every salah, this is not what the Prophet Muhammad SAW commanded her with. But it also shows that the one who's on the prolonged bleeding is still wajib for her to pray, except for the days that would have been considered her normal days of her menses. But it mentions wujub al-wudu lil-mustahana likulli salah, the obligation for wudu for every salah, for the one who is on the prolonged bleeding. The prolonged bleeding. Unless they follow the other option of ikhtisal wal jama', making ghusl and combining the salawat. Naam. So we'll stop there, inshallah, and we'll continue the coming ahadith in the next lessons, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.